Hello and welcome to What's Your Process? Today I am joined by Chris Bogue. He's the owner of Bogue Communications, the host of Chris Sells His Soul, the host of Death by PowerPoint, and the creator of the complete guide to selling on video, which is available on chrisbogue.io. Chris, what's up, man? It's good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I'm really excited about this. Video is obviously really important. It's a big deal to a lot of people. Apparently, it's taken over the algorithms these days, so I've been really looking forward to this. The way we usually jump into the show is I ask, what do people need to know about you?
Just know that I've spent the past 4 or 5 years helping people make money online through video. So a lot of that is in the realm of sales, cold calls, cold emails. It's harder to get through than ever. Video is surprisingly untapped ground. Very few people in sales are willing to send a personalized video. So I've been teaching that for a few years now. I partner with SendSpark. I'm a strategic advisor to them. But I also am a sketch comedian. I've been writing and performing sketch comedy and teaching improv workshops for almost 20 years now. And yeah, I do a lot of brand partnerships. I do a lot of custom content for companies, B2B companies usually, and create a lot of video content and teach a lot of other people how to create interesting stuff, mostly on LinkedIn, but also TikTok and YouTube and Instagram.
That's really cool. Why are people resistant, do you think, to making personalized video?
People in sales don't want to make personalized videos because it's typically lots of effort with not much payoff. What happens is they don't have any sort of process and their boss tells them, go be creative. And they spend all week trying to think of how to be creative. And then they send something that's way too long and way too wordy and it doesn't get watched. And they're like, damn it, I wasted my whole week. And then they go back to calling. You need to be able to do it fast. I have a philosophy that if you're going to send one, you might as well send 5 or 10. Just sit down with a big list of names and just go one after the other and just get a bunch all at once. And a recurring lesson, no matter what type of video you're doing, is footage is valuable. Get the footage, make time to film the footage, plan what kind of footage you need. It's always best to get footage because you can always choose to not use footage. But yeah, the hard part is filming strategically all the time. And you got to do that if you want to make a lot of video.
Makes a ton of sense. It actually sounds like how you get good at making cold calls too. It's repetition, right? The more you do it.
It makes you better at cold calls too, because you spend a lot of time learning how to say your message over and over and over again. Whereas with a cold call, if they don't pick up, you just take another sip of your coffee or something. But yeah, it's like batting practice.
Yeah, the more at bats. So hold on, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here.
Please do.
And let's, I'm curious because I know we had a little pre-convo before the show started recording, and I'm really excited about the topic. But even just this point right here about just got to do it. And if you're going to do 1, do 5, I think is really great. And it leads into process in such an important way, because if it's taking you 1 week to make a video, and the idea of making 5 then, right, is unbearable because that's going to take you 5 weeks. So it's figuring out what works, what doesn't work, streamlining it, making it super, super straightforward is I think so critical to video. Is that right?
Yeah. And it works in the opposite direction too. If you make a lot of stuff and then realize we're veering out of sales now and I'm talking about video content, but you need to be able to just throw a lot of stuff out there and a lot of it's going to fail. But the flip side of that is if something works, do it again. And you can do a better version of it. You can do it bigger, better, more attention grabbing, more audience interactive, more sensational, more surprising. Literally just do the same idea again, but better. And that's a thing that people I don't think realize when they see a creator who has, gets this huge viral video or something. Usually that's just version 6 of a video that did just kind of okay. But you gotta go try stuff. And I was taught to perform at this weird midnight theater in college called Theater of Ted, which was founded by Brendan Hunt from Ted Lasso. It's weird connection. But their motto was dare to suck. You gotta be willing to go out there. It's not try to suck. You actually are trying to do good. But you have to accept that you might fall flat on your face. And like, oh, well, you got to be okay with that because it's going to happen. But also sometimes one of these random ones are going to hit it out of the park and the audience is going to love it. And you need to put a lot out there.
I love that. We're going to dare to suck today.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's my job literally every time I do one of these things, where it's just like, I don't know. I know you have been on many a podcast and obviously in many a video, but like for me, this is my first foray into hosting, into having my own show. So like even like going into this from the jump, I was like, you know what, this might suck, but I'm really looking forward to it. So hearing that that's a mantra that exists and that is something that drives people forward is really motivating in a weird way. And like, yeah, definitely not trying to suck, but you know, we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah, I mean the other thing too is even if the show sucks, even if this is a bad episode, if we get 30 good seconds, that's enough. Earlier in the episode, you made a joke and then you like took a swig of coffee and you laughed and it was this great little moment. And I'm like, oh man, even if we just get that, that looks cool. Like if I was flipping through the feed, I'd be like, oh, they look like they're having a good time. And then I would carry on. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the beauty of doing long form stuff. And that's kind of like the importance of process too, is like if you can plan these kind of mini moments in your long form show, you can convert them to various kinds of short form content and other types of visual storytelling.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's jump into the meat of this thing, because I feel like we're already teasing some bits of process and, you know, you've already kind of produced some gems, which is awesome. But Chris, what is one thing you're world class at?
I am good at making other people look good on video and off of video, but I do it on video as part of my job. But I like to think that I have a knack for getting a good performance out of people. And that comes from my time writing and directing shows where like you have an ensemble and you have to decide who's going to play what part. And you try to figure out people's strengths and you put them in situations where they can really, the strengths can be an asset, you know, and when to push them and when to nurture them. And you're dealing with big egos sometimes, or sometimes you're dealing with new people who are trying to find their confidence and trying to find their voice. And yeah, I've always been really interested in how to get the best performance out of other people. So that's what I try to do every day with the content, with my shows, with my clients. They're not the main character, or I'm not the main character. They're the main character. I'm just hopefully one of the most useful minor characters in their life.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And where these days, especially like within your own business, like where are you making people look good most? Or where, you know, like I'd love to have you follow me around and make me look good everywhere I go, right? But like where is it most useful in the day-to-day, and where do people need help most?
So it's mostly in the realm of sales, I would say, if I'm talking about like what I'm spending the most time with clients doing. But you can always control your first impression and your last impression. So no matter where you are in the sales funnel, video can usually help you get to the next step. And I do a lot of like cold outreach. I teach people how to do like, how do you reach out to strangers and not get them to put a pox on you and throw you in the spam folder. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought because that line. But yeah, for first impressions and last impressions, you can always choose to show up as something in their inbox that's a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit friendlier, a little bit more professional than the rest of the stuff they're going to get. And then, yeah, you want to control your last impression in sales. So if I go into a meeting and I've got 4 or 5 decision makers in the room and I'm trying to get them talking about their goals and their priorities and, you know, the problems that they're trying to solve, I'll send a recap video right after the meeting's done. I'm sitting right here at the camera. So I pop on the camera and I'm like, hey, and I say their names. I'm like, it was great chatting with you. As a reminder, here's the 3 top ways I can see me helping you reach this goal. Like you said, this is a priority. So blah, blah, blah. And I make my case and it's a 1, 2, 3 thing. And now it's like, that's a memorialized little moment in time.
Yeah.
Maybe they need to talk. Maybe they're not going to be finalizing that decision till next week. Maybe there were decision makers that weren't in the room. You might talk for an hour and go down all these rabbit holes and stuff to memorialize that on your terms, making the case that is most impactful. It's also saving them a lot of time too.
Yeah.
Doing the work of summarizing and presenting this ideally in an artful way. But yeah, oftentimes you can do a lot more with a 45-second video than you can with like 30-minute meeting. I don't know. You could do a lot in a 30-minute meeting, but you could do a lot with 30 seconds. And I don't think people take advantage of it enough.
Well, people fill the space that they have, right? So if you have 30 minutes, you're going to take up 30 minutes. If you have 30 seconds, you're going to take 30 seconds. And it's all about the density of information, clarity, and all the other pieces, right? So ultimately, it's about doing the most that you can within the allotted space that you have, I imagine. And that brings me to process, because I imagine a process for a 30-minute video is different than a 30-second video and whatnot. But like, you know, when we were chatting earlier, you had mentioned some prepping for your shows, like how you have a very specific process for that. And then you were talking about how like within LinkedIn, like there's videos that you have within the feed and they take on a certain life of their own versus videos that you might send via email or DM, and how those show up. And like video, it's one of those things where it's like everyone's video this, video that. Everyone needs to be sending more videos, more, right? Like the TikTokification of LinkedIn is a hot topic and all those things. But like, it's not just like, I'm going to record a video and that's it. Because even that 30-second video has intent. It has thought behind it. Yeah, it might be a quick video that you've put together, but it didn't come from a random just thought. Like there was intent and ideation behind that, even if it's, again, a 30-second clip. So like, I would love to talk through your process for making some of these videos and how you approach it, because like what seems to so many is like so straightforward and simple is anything but, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like, especially on LinkedIn, most of my videos, it's like a 3-part kind of writing process. So what's your attention grabbing hook? Then like, what's the substance, which is usually the rule of threes. We can go into the rule of threes more, but the rule of threes was like a comedy thing that I learned. That's also a business writing thing. That's also just a general life thing. Like if you're going to give people bullet points, if you're going to do 2, you might as well do 3. 3 is this magic number in storytelling. For some reason, the human mind loves 3 pigs and 3 blind mice and 3 wishes and all those things. So yeah, your hook, your 3 things, and then usually some sort of call to action. So especially on LinkedIn, you can ask the audience to do something, which is, there's a lot of variety in there. You don't always want to ask them to go buy your stuff, although I do sometimes. But sometimes you want to spur them to conversation. Sometimes you just want them to feel a feeling really hard as the last moment, because if the last moment hits them really hard, they're going to smash the like button. Or you could even just ask them. Sometimes I've experimented with like, just ask, like, if you get to the end of the video, I'm like, whoa, hey, you made it to the end of the video. Like, could you click the like button? That helps. And I'll be looking through it. I'll be like, wow, this video has a lot of likes on it. I'm like, oh, I literally asked the audience to like it, so that has an impact. But yeah, once you've got these 3 component parts, it's like something's got to grab their attention. I got to have 3 things. And then what am I going to end with? Yeah. Then you can write anything. And then it's like, okay, whatever your topic is, whatever your goal is, you can start with whichever of the 3 is easiest. And I sometimes start with different ones. Sometimes I just see something funny or visual and I'm like, oh man, that would be so funny if I started a video and I had this visual gag in it, you know? Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, okay, well, here's an important lesson I want to teach the audience. So what's my simple 1, 2, 3 that I'm going to ask them? And then it's like, okay, now they know a thing. What next? What's that call to action? You know, what do I want to ask them to do? Do I want them to give me more information? Do I want them to go like check out some other further thing? Do I just want them to click the like button or click the share button? Or do I want them to attend an event? That's a popular one. I always make short form content that supports my long form content. So very often the end of the video is like, hey, this event is coming up. And if you go to the description, you can join it for free. So like, see you there. And then you're like, oh crap, how am I going to pull them in? And then
Yeah.
it's funny because sometimes that hook is the very last thing where I'm like, I don't know, I'll do that. I'll have some other version of me there. And like, I'll come up with something on a spot. And then like the hook is the thing that everybody remembers. And like,
Right.
You wouldn't know that that was the last thing that I wrote, but it's like, you're following the process. So, you always have to have a hook of some kind. And maybe that's a visual gag. Maybe that's just an interesting line of dialogue. Maybe that's text on screen. Maybe that's some sort of movement. There's like all sorts of ways you can do that, but you have to do something. And it's like, once you've got the 3 parts, like you just do it again. You make a commitment to yourself. How many times a month are you going to put these out there? And, you could do a lot within that simple structure.
Well, what's interesting is it's like an email in a weird way where like they say don't write your subject line first, right? You write the body, you write the story, whatever it is, and then you come back and it's like, well, what encapsulates it or what will get people to want to read this? And it's kind of similar here, I imagine, where it's like, sometimes the ask is easier, right? It's like, I want people to go to this event. I want people to sign up for this product or to like and share. That one's really clear, right? Like it's also in a way like slightly selfish, right? It's like, I want someone to book that meeting. I want someone to sign up for a free demo. I want someone to do something. Like, why are they going to do it? Okay, cool. So here are the 3 things. Well, you'll learn, it'll be fun, and I'll throw you cash. I don't know, whatever, right? Like whatever. The 3rd thing is probably not cash related, but it could be. And then, I don't know, that probably actually is your hook. If you're going to throw someone cash, you just probably lead with that one, truth be told. So maybe the worst example I could have gone with.
You'd be surprised. I've done that, and like companies for marketing promotions will do like giveaways of various kinds. And you could actually get in trouble because even if you're offering like free gift cards or something, 25 or 50 free dollars, most people don't care. They don't care. So it's like you get the same 2 or 3 people who are on it every episode and they show up and get the gift card.
Yeah.
But it doesn't turn into this huge driver as opposed to maybe your attention grabber is like a sentence that may have come out of their mouth earlier this week. Because a lot of my content creation process involves audience listening, engaging your audience in a conversation and asking your audience questions and using those as the basis for more content creation. So if I'm doing my job well, I'm growing my audience and like my content contains a little bit of stuff that's like been on their mind recently, hopefully.
Well, you're creating a flywheel. You're creating a content flywheel, and they're the ones that are feeding it, which is really, really cool. So back to this process though, because I think this is really interesting, and to be able to kind of like literally just like box it up into hook, 3 things, CTA is really powerful. Do you use this for all of the, and I get that there are sub parts to all of this, right? Like, and I'd love to jump into that in a sec, but like whether it be, your shows, whether it be sketch videos, whether it be sales videos, like, are you using this process for all of them?
I'm not using like this exact process, but I do script and outline most of my stuff. And yeah, certain best practices are there. And like, again, I was an improviser and sketch comedian for a long time. So if you do a lot of improv, anybody who's done a lot of improv, like long form improv, is familiar with this concept of the Herald. The Herald it's a long form improv structure. And it's basically 3 sets of 3 scenes with a game in between each. And it kind of is similar to the structure of a sitcom. And again, it goes back to this magic rule of 3s, where it's like the 3 different storylines that kind of run concurrently and then all kind of tie together at the end around 1 or 2 nice little themes. That's been very like ingrained in us. And so, yeah, all my stuff kind of ends up loosely based on that structure, but not all the time. You're breaking the rules. And I guess we can talk about, actually, whenever my engagement on LinkedIn starts dying, I usually can look at my content and realize that I didn't play with the form enough.
Okay.
When I'm doing it the best, I'm constantly finding ways to like break the form and do weird things on LinkedIn and show up in places that you wouldn't expect, doing things that you don't see other people doing. The challenge is I also do a live show, a recurring live show, and I try to follow the NPR advice. I think it was the I think it was the Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me people. They said their advice for putting on a good radio show was make it the exact same show every single episode.
So is that like from a predictability standpoint?
Yeah, the audience always knows what they're going to get. If you like that radio show, you tune in because that's what it is. And that's what my Death by PowerPoint is. It's a live show I do. People show up and 3 performers have to give a PowerPoint presentation they've never seen before. It's like each person goes, it's a 5-minute presentation. Each slide is on screen for 30 seconds. Person 1, person 2, person 3, run some ads while the judges are tabulating. You crown the winner. That's it. 25-minute show. The fact that the structure is the same every single time means I can plan it. And if I need to bring on part-time help or something, it's easy to farm out different tasks to other people. Or, if you're running a more complex organization than I am, the stuff around the long form, I kind of gotta always screw with things and try new things and take risks.
Love that. I mean, that's I hear that quote on predictability, and like I hear what you're saying, but I also think that like the magic comes from the fact that you're putting these 3 people on the spot and they're coming up with it, and like it's a game show, right? It's really what it is in its format. And the same thing, right? Like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, whatever. Like they all follow the same structure day in and day out, but it's the contestants coming in that really create the variety and the.
Yeah, and social media loves conflict, and I don't. And like, it's an improv thing to avoid arguments. Like that's a thing on stage. In improv, they say don't ask questions and like don't have arguments, which is like, oh God, what else are you gonna do? Yeah. That's what social media loves, just people arguing, or people fighting. So yeah, I had to figure out some way to cater to humanity's need for gladiator battles, or they want to watch somebody best somebody else. So all right, we're all going to do a silly PowerPoint, and like it's a competition, but I don't really care. To me it's like, whose line is it anyway, where it's like the points don't matter. I literally crown the winner, smartest person in the world, and which is a pretty audacious thing to do. And sometimes the person who I want to win is not the person who wins. And that's a valuable part of the process, to remember that the audience is going to disagree with you sometimes. And you got to learn to deal with it.
What do you do when they disagree?
Sometimes I try the same idea again, but I try to make it better. And sometimes it works. Sometimes you have to be honest with yourself sometimes and be like, oh, I guess this wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But also, like, sometimes I look at the videos that I made that really fail, and I can almost always point to the same problem in my lowest performing videos. I notice and be like, oh, I got 7 seconds into this video and you don't see any human being's face a single time. And literally sometimes like the same video with the first 7 seconds chopped off might be the difference between a big flop and a big success. So again, it's like, get the footage. Just because they didn't see it the first time doesn't mean that it's dead. And again, if you're doing this thoughtfully and thinking ahead, this footage that you're creating should have a life beyond just one piece of content.
So that's really interesting. And I love that you're thinking about it this way, because I think oftentimes, we create things and then just kind of dispose of them. And that's not the point at all. And I think like what you're saying, especially like this example of like the first 7 seconds with no humanity, like it's really resonating with me. Because it's like, well, if we chop the 7 seconds and then maybe it's a hit. Like you've got to be able to step away from yourself in a way and be objective about the content that you're creating to say, you know what, maybe I don't need the 7 seconds. Because like I think we all tend to be like, when we put our creative hats on, we get to be very protective of the work that we create, right? So like how do you go about saying, you know what, like objectively, I see why this isn't working. I'm going to go back, I'm going to make this cut, and I'm going to re-release it to the world and hope for the best there.
I'd say as a video creator, it's very important for me to put my director hat on. And I had a lot of years directing other people on stage. And my whole philosophy is I teach people to think of themselves as like 10 different people. Like you have different roles you play throughout life. Sometimes you're the student, sometimes you're the teacher, sometimes you're the father, sometimes you are the son. So get used to playing like different versions of yourself out there. And yeah, you have to do a lot of stuff because you need the data. You need to understand if this is actually resonating with the audience. But then you got to look at yourself and you got to be like, which of these versions of me do I actually find compelling? And every time I work with, so I do, even when I'm doing like team training, a lot of what I do is one-on-one coaching with people. And the most important thing that I can do, the most useful, helpful thing I can do that they all hate is we just sit down and watch their video together. We just sit and we watch it. We sit there in the audience and we get done. And I'm like, what did you think of that? And then they give me their reaction as an audience member, and in the beginning, they're always cringing at everything they do. And it's like, there's probably a reason for that. And like when I started, I would look at my footage and I would be like, this is too much. I'm giving too much to the camera. You're not on stage. On stage, your audience is, you might have hundreds or people, dozens of people at least, and they might be far away from you. So you've got to project and be very big. Whereas on camera, like HD video captures a lot of subtlety and nuance. So that's good for comedy too. A lot of the funniest jokes are just a person looking at the camera like, yeah. So yeah, figuring out what you can bring to the camera. What are your strengths as a storyteller? And then like, yeah, you got to just try to keep getting better, and having to watch and edit your own stuff hopefully will make you better. I think it does. At least it helped me a lot.
Yeah, as someone who is new-ish to the game, I would say it's definitely like made me rethink how I speak and how I show up and how I sit, and even just like I realized like at some point I've had to adjust my glasses like a few times, and like I hate that. I need to be able to sit still, and like you start noticing some of these behaviors, and it's like, all right, I need to remember to go buy a screwdriver to actually tighten the.
Yeah, that's the other difficult thing too about teaching on camera stuff, where it's like people don't realize there's like 50 different things I'm like not doing because I've learned to not do them. And yeah, it's one of those things where people don't realize they don't know what they don't know. There's still so much I don't know. And part of the reason why I'm so fascinated by video specifically is because the generations that are younger than me, this is even more important for them. This is even more central to the way that they communicate with each other and that they understand the world. So we need to be thinking about what that's going to be like when they are in charge of everything, taking care of us in our nursing homes. This is all a more casual thing for them.
Yeah, well, it's normal. It's a way of life. It's just it's how you manage. And that's a really interesting transition to see, right? Where like, I mean, I'm sure like me, you remember a world where like video was a novelty. And like when YouTube first showed up and how we'd all be watching Charlie Bit My Finger or whatever. And that would be it. And now there's so much video, and there's so much for every taste and every personality and every genre and if you're into something, there's likely people making video about it. If you're not into something, there's likely people making video about that too. And they're all getting so good, and the technology is getting so, like I was having a conversation earlier with someone and they were like, oh, I'm looking to start making videos. And I was like, well, you probably shouldn't talk to me. There are better people to talk to. But like, they were like, what software do you use? And I was just like, without even thinking, I just listed off like 5 or 6 different pieces of software that now have become part of my day to day, where like a year ago, I probably wouldn't have even known about them, let alone been able to recommend them. And it's just like, it's interesting to see how much more prevalent video has become to non-video professionals, and how like for the like video natives, like the generation that you're talking about, it's just that's just life.
Yeah. I also wonder if someday we'll see a backlash against it. Like if the generations that have been on video 24/7 their entire life, who can't exist without their parents, their school, their government, their company, everybody tracking literally every single step they take. At some point, I kind of think the youngins are going to be like, screw it. We're all buying parchment and we're scrolls are coming back.
Get me my feather. Yeah, no, I mean, we're seeing it with like Zooms, like people not wanting to take Zoom calls and wanting to do phone calls, right? Like people wanting to, like the increase in sales of records, like physical records, the increase in sales of like physical books, like Barnes and Noble just announced recently, I think, that they're opening up a ton of new stores. It's just like, if you said that 2-3 years ago, people would have laughed. But there is this kind of pushback towards analog, and maybe it doesn't go scroll and parchment and quiver, but like, I think there's something to be said about with everything. There's always like a balance and an equilibrium that needs to get met. And yeah, I imagine being on camera 24/7 is daunting, and we will see that pushback, but I don't know that it's today.
I'm also biased because I do a lot of stuff on paper. It's always been very central to my process, but it comes from when you're writing a sketch show, it's very important that you always have your actors on the same version of the sketch. Mm-hmm. And when you write version 2 or version 3, you have to take the old sketches away and give them the new ones, because you don't want someone to accidentally memorize the wrong page and all of a sudden, there's a lot of problems that can go with that. And I was always taught you will get a better read out of people if if they're just reading off paper. Don't have actors reading off their iPhone or whatever. Give them a paper copy and they will give you a better performance. And paper has always been central to my writing. Oftentimes, if I have no ideas at all and some sort of looming deadline, I will turn on a transcription. You could do this in Google Docs right next to spell check. There's voice typing. Or you could just do this with a voice note in your phone or whatever. But I'll just talk through the prompt. I'll put 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something on the clock, talk through the prompt, transcribe it into a page. I'll print that out and there's draft 1. That's me speaking through it. Now I can go through and I can cross things out. I can highlight things. I can circle things, whatever. But something about printing it out on paper makes it real. And something about being able to write on paper and stuff makes it feel like I can kind of step outside of myself and, again, think more like an editor than a writer of what's good. Because sometimes it's I just rambled 5 minutes worth of stuff, and that ends up being a 20-second video. There's 2 good sentences in there, and that's pretty much it. But you need a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you need a first draft. So just talk through the premise. You have so many tools where you can talk into something and it'll turn it into text. Talk through an idea. Boom. There's draft 1. Now go make it better. That's
really cool. And as a fellow paper person, I don't I couldn't imagine not. I don't know. I love all my tech. I'm a huge tech guy, first adopter for pretty much everything, but you'll have to pry this from my cold dead hands. You know what I mean? I think there's just something to it where you get to just focus on one thing, right? On your phone, you have distractions. On your screens, you have distractions. Everywhere you have distractions. And just this notion of having a place that is analog, that is focused. And I get that you're talking about voice recording and voice notes and whatnot, but even then it's just stream of thought and focused thought, which I think is really powerful. With that said, I do want to be cognizant of your time and respectful of your time, because this has been awesome. And candidly, I didn't know what to expect going into this conversation. I do think we've kind of jumped around a little bit, which has been interesting. And the centralized notion of just here's how you start, and then also then kind of following it up with here's how you get through writer's block, or here's how you get started. If you're stuck, I think is really cool as well. So, I mean, where can we see your process in action next?
If you want to see my process in action, the easiest thing you could do is follow me on LinkedIn. I have a bell that I ring. Pretend that I rang a bell. Add that in post. But yeah, there you go. Follow me on LinkedIn. I give away a lot of free advice. If you want to pay for advice, I go deep on my video prospecting process. That's the complete guide to selling on video. I sell that at my website, chrisbogue.io. That's like 2.5 hours of lessons going deep into the sales process. So it's a lot about outbound video. It's also a lot about LinkedIn and how to find people on LinkedIn, how to grow your network on LinkedIn, how to message people on LinkedIn. So that's probably the most in-depth documentation of my process that I have out there. Or you can be friends with me and check me out on Friday because there's a new episode of Death by PowerPoint that'll be going. So you could see what the process looks like in action. You'll get to actually see a show with guests and slideshows and unplanned madness. And it's all on LinkedIn. Chris Bogue.
Chris Bogue, Unplanned Madness. That's the headline right there. Chris, thank you so much. This is awesome. This was awesome, is awesome, will be awesome for future listeners. I don't know. I'm just rambling now. But really appreciate your time. Everyone, seriously, give Chris a follow on LinkedIn. You will not be disappointed. Check out Death by PowerPoint. It is very, very funny. Chris, thank you very much. And I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.